In my 42 years on the bench, I believed I had encountered every variation of human behavior that could pass through a courtroom door. I had seen remorse so genuine it broke hardened prosecutors, and arrogance so deep it left defendants blind to their own downfall. But one cold Wednesday morning in February challenged everything I thought I knew about entitlement and power. Before I tell you how that day unfolded, let me say this: the courtroom is a mirror. It reflects who you are, stripped of titles, uniforms, and influence. And on that morning, one man's reflection revealed something ugly. I arrived at court at 8:15 a.m., right on schedule. My father, Joseph, raised me on one rule that never failed: if you're not 10 minutes early, you're late. He worked construction during the day, security at night, and took weekend shifts at the docks. He didn't talk much about principles, he lived them. Respect, he taught me, was never owed because of status. It was earned through conduct. I was halfway through my first cup of strong Italian coffee, made faithfully every morning by my clerk, Christina, when she slid a thick file across my desk. "Judge," she said quietly, "you need to see this one." I opened the folder and paused at the name printed across the top: Chief Daniel Crawford. Multiple traffic violations, reckless driving, resisting arrest, assault on a police officer. I looked up: a police chief charged with assaulting an officer. Christina nodded grimly. 95 miles per hour in a 45 zone. When state troopers tried to stop him, he attacked one of them. There's video. She hesitated, then added, "The prosecutor asked for you specifically. They want a judge who won't be intimidated by a badge." Daniel Crawford was 52 years old, police chief of Westbrook for 8 years. He came from money, old money. His father owned car dealerships across the state. Crawford attended an elite private college and somehow landed at the top without ever climbing the ladder. No patrol years, no street work, just politics, connections, and generous donations. That's how men like him acquire power. What the public didn't yet know was that the state police had been quietly investigating him for months. Abuse of authority, threatening officers who challenged him, flashing his badge for special treatment. This arrest wasn't an accident, it was inevitable. I finished my coffee and asked, "How's the courtroom?" "Packed," Christina replied. "Press everywhere, officers in uniform, and Chief Crawford brought about 20 supporters, like it's a campaign rally." As I walked toward the courtroom, I thought about my father again. He never wore a uniform that commanded silence, but people respected him because he respected them. Crawford, I already suspected, understood neither. The courtroom buzzed with noise. State troopers sat in the back, rigid and watchful. Reporters lined the walls, notebooks ready. Regular citizens filled the benches. Up front, Crawford's supporters, tailored suits, polished shoes, checked their phones and spoke loudly, as if the court were beneath them. Then I saw him. Chief Daniel Crawford sat at the defense table, tall and composed, gray hair perfectly styled. His dress uniform pressed to perfection. His arms were crossed, a faint smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. He looked less like a defendant and more like a man waiting to be applauded. "I'll rise," the bailiff announced. Everyone stood. Almost everyone. Chief Crawford remained seated for several extra seconds, making sure the room noticed. Only after his attorney nudged him did he rise, slowly, his smug smile never fading. Before calling his case, I addressed another matter. "Case number 247-739, I said. State versus Jennifer Martinez." A young woman approached the bench, no older than 28. She wore a simple blue dress, clean but worn. Her hands trembled as she clasped them together. "Miss Martinez," I said gently, "you're charged with driving on a suspended license. Can you explain?" Her voice shook. "Your Honor, I'm a single mother. I have 2 kids, 4 and 6. I work 2 jobs. My license got suspended because I couldn't pay old parking tickets. I was driving to pick up my kids from daycare. If I'm late, they charge $50. I didn't have $50. I reviewed her file: minimum wage pay stubs, medical bills for her daughter's asthma, rent receipts. This wasn't recklessness, this was survival." "Have you ever been in trouble before?" I asked. "No, Your Honor, never. I know I was wrong." I looked at her, then at the law, then at justice. "Miss Martinez," I said, "I'm dismissing this case. Your license will be reinstated immediately. You're working hard, taking care of your family, and you've shown respect for this court. Go pick up your children." Tears streamed down her face. "Thank you, Your Honor." As she walked out, Crying tears of relief, I noticed Chief Crawford watching her. He laughed. A quiet, dismissive chuckle. He leaned toward one of his supporters, whispered something, and they both laughed again. In that moment, I understood something clearly. This was no longer just about traffic violations. This was about character, and the courtroom was about to expose it. This case was never really about speed limits or procedure. It was about a man who believed himself untouchable, a man who had no respect for ordinary people and no business wearing a badge. Case number 247821, I announced State versus Chief Daniel Crawford. Crawford rose from his seat, but he didn't move toward the bench right away. Instead, he took his time, straightening the crease of his uniform, adjusting his cuffs, leaning toward the front row to whisper something to his supporters. A few of them nodded, smiling, as though they were backstage at a rally instead of sitting in a courtroom. His attorney, Philip Berkshire, tailored suit, silver cufflinks, the unmistakable polish of an expensive Boston firm, stepped forward ahead of him. "Your Honor," Berkshire began smoothly, "my client, Chief Crawford, is here regarding what we believe to be a complete misunderstanding." "Mr. Berkshire," I interrupted, "I'm not interested in an opening statement. This is an arraignment." Chief Crawford approached the bench. Crawford finally stepped forward, moving slowly, deliberately, as if the court were inconveniencing him rather than the other way around. "Chief Crawford," I said, "you are charged with reckless driving at 95 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone, resisting arrest, and assault on a law enforcement officer. How do you plead?" He met my eyes without blinking. "Not guilty, Your Honor. To all charges. Do you understand the seriousness of these allegations?" A smile tugged at his lips. "With all due respect, Your Honor, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. When you've been in law enforcement as long as I have, you learn that situations can look very different from the outside." "How long have you been in law enforcement, Chief?" I asked. 25 years. And during that time, he added confidently, "as Chief of Police for Westbrook, I've earned the right to professional courtesy." Professional courtesy, a polite phrase that usually means look the other way. "Not in this courtroom," I said evenly. The first real crack appeared when I asked him to explain his version of events. "Chief Crawford," I said, "the state police report indicates you were traveling at 95 miles per hour. Is that accurate?" He shrugged, actually shrugged, "in my courtroom. I may have been going a little fast," he said casually, "but I was responding to what I believed was an emergency." "An emergency?" I asked. "There's no record of an emergency call. I received a text message that made me believe I needed to get somewhere quickly." "Do you have that message?" "I deleted it," he replied as though we were discussing an old grocery list. I took a breath. "When the state troopers approached you, they asked for identification. What did you provide?" Instead of answering, Crawford pulled out his phone and glanced at it while I was speaking. "Chief Crawford," I said sharply, "put the phone away. Now." He slid it back into his pocket, that smirk still fixed in place. "I showed them my police credentials," he said. "I assumed that would be sufficient." "Sufficient," I repeated. "You were traveling at more than twice the posted speed limit." His tone hardened. "Your Honor, you need to understand how law enforcement works. There is professional courtesy between departments. Those troopers should have recognized that I'm a fellow officer and handled the situation appropriately." "Appropriately," I said. "Meaning let you go." "I mean understood the situation," he snapped. "I've spent my entire adult life in law enforcement. I understand these encounters better than most people." My father's voice echoed in my mind. "The man who wears the badge carries the greatest responsibility." "Chief Crawford," I said, "in this courtroom, everyone is treated the same, badge or no badge." As I began addressing the assault charge, Crawford turned his head toward his supporters in the front row and rolled his eyes. A few of them chuckled. "Chief Crawford," I said firmly, "turn around and face the court." He did slowly. "I'm just wondering," he said, irritation creeping into his voice, "how long this is going to take. I have actual police business to attend to, real criminals to catch. This is a waste of everyone's time." "A waste of time," I replied. "Assaulting a state trooper." "That's not what happened," he said loudly. "I was defending myself from aggressive behavior. There is dashcam footage," I reminded him. He turned to the gallery again. "Of course there's footage. There's always footage when they want to take down someone who actually does their job. Chief Crawford, I said sharply, you are addressing this court, not your audience. He finished murmuring to his supporters before finally facing forward. I stood. Let me be very clear, I said. You are facing serious criminal charges. Your conduct in this courtroom is inappropriate. He took a step closer without permission. Then let me be clear with you. Your Honor, he said, his voice low and threatening. I'm the chief of police in Westbrook. I have relationships with judges across 3 counties. I have the mayor's personal cell phone number. I've had dinner at the governor's mansion. So maybe you should think carefully about who you're talking to. The courtroom went dead silent. State troopers in the back straightened. Citizens stared. Reporters' pens flew across paper. I looked at him steadily. Chief Crawford, I said, are you suggesting that your connection should influence this court? And in that moment, every badge in the room understood the truth. The law had finally met a man who thought it didn't apply to him. I'm stating facts, Crawford said coldly. I'm not some nobody you can push around. I have power in this state, real power, and you need to recognize that. I looked at him steadily. Chief Crawford, the only power that exists in this courtroom is the power of the law. He laughed and pointed at me. You need to understand the real world, Judge. Laws are for regular people, for people like that woman who was crying about parking tickets. But people like me, people who protect society, we operate in a gray area. Sometimes rules have to bend. I felt the room tighten. Are you saying the law doesn't apply to you, Chief? I asked. He hesitated just long enough to measure the impact of his next words. Then he spoke, slowly and clearly, words that would end his career. That's exactly what I'm saying. The laws as written don't apply to people like me. We enforce them. We decide when and how they matter. The courtroom exploded. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Reporters shot upright. His own attorney lunged for his arm, whispering urgently, but Crawford shook him off as if he were nothing more than an inconvenience. I sat back down stunned. In 42 years on the bench, I had never heard such arrogance spoken so openly. Chief Crawford, I said, carefully controlling my voice, I want to be absolutely clear. You are stating in open court that the law does not apply to you. That's right, he said proudly. I've given my life to protecting this state, and yes, I believe that earns me certain considerations. What kind of considerations? I asked. Professional courtesy, he replied. Understanding. When a fellow officer is involved, you don't treat him like a common criminal. You handle it quietly. You let him go. He leaned forward, emboldened by his own words. I've been in law enforcement 25 years. You learn things, you hear things. You keep files, judges, prosecutors, politicians, people with secrets. His lawyer was pale now, half standing, trying desperately to interrupt. Crawford waved him off. It would be in everyone's best interest to resolve this quietly, Crawford continued. Drop the charges. Let me get back to my job. Everyone wins. Otherwise, I asked. He smiled, slow and deliberate. Otherwise, things get complicated. Questions start getting asked. Information surfaces, you understand. I removed my glasses and cleaned them slowly, buying myself a moment. I thought about every honest officer who wore a badge with humility. I thought about Jennifer Martinez, terrified of a $50 late fee, and here stood a man earning 6 figures, declaring himself above the law. I put my glasses back on. Chief Crawford, I said, are you threatening this court? I don't make threats, he replied smoothly. I deal in facts, and the fact is, I know things. The room fell silent. For example, he continued, I know you have a son, Michael Caprio, a lawyer. His firm handles city contracts, doesn't it? Would be unfortunate if questions started being asked about how those contracts were awarded. My jaw tightened. Now he had crossed the line. Chief Crawford, I said sharply, you need to stop speaking right now. But he didn't. And you, he went on, turning his attention fully to me, you've been on this bench a long time. Long enough that some of your past decisions could be revisited, reviewed, questioned. It'd be a shame if your legacy got tarnished. His attorney was standing now, nearly begging. Your Honor, perhaps we should take a recess. Sit down. Berkshire, Crawford snapped. I'm handling this. He turned back toward me, eyes glittering with confidence. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to dismiss these charges using whatever legal language you want. I walk out of here and go back to my life. That's how this works. He leaned forward. And if you don't, he asked softly, then I make some calls. Your son's firm loses contracts. Your reputation gets questioned. Articles appear about judges who've been on the bench too long. You understand how this works, old man. Old man, he had threatened my family. My son, who had built his career through honesty and hard work. I stood. The courtroom could feel it. The air changed. Chief Daniel Crawford, I said, my voice steady but thunderous, you have just made the biggest mistake of your life. He laughed. What are you going to do? Find me. Give me community service. I didn't raise my voice. Chief Crawford, I am finding you in contempt of court. His smile vanished. Bailiff, I said, take him into custody immediately. For the first time that morning, power left his face, and the law finally took its place. You can't do that, Crawford shouted. Do you know who I am? I'm the chief of police. I know exactly who you are, I replied. As the bailiff stepped forward, something inside Crawford snapped. The smug confidence drained from his face, replaced by raw panic and rage. His complexion turned crimson, veins standing out on his neck as he began to shout. This is garbage, he screamed. You're nothing but a small-town judge. I will destroy you. I will destroy your son, everyone you care about. He tried to shove past the bailiff, but before he could take another step, 2 state troopers were already moving in from the back of the courtroom. I run Westbrook, Crawford yelled, thrashing. I run this whole region. You can't treat me like this. I'm Chief Daniel Crawford. The troopers seized his arms firmly. Get your hands off me, he barked. That's an order. One of the troopers leaned in and spoke calmly, almost sadly. We don't work for you anymore, Chief. We work for the people of Rhode Island. As the handcuffs clicked shut, Crawford completely unraveled. He screamed threats at anyone within earshot. You're all going to pay, he shouted. I have files. I have information on all of you. As they began escorting him out, I spoke one final time. Chief Crawford, I said clearly, you told this court that the law does not apply to you. You are about to learn exactly how wrong you are. He continued screaming as he was removed from the courtroom, his words echoing down the hallway. I called an immediate recess. During that recess, I placed 3 phone calls, 1 to the state attorney general, 1 to state police internal affairs, and 1 to the FBI. What Crawford had admitted and threatened. When court resumed, the room was even more crowded than before. News had spread fast. This court will now address the charges against former Chief Daniel Crawford, I said. Former, someone whispered loudly from the gallery. Yes, I confirmed. During the recess, the mayor of Westbrook contacted the court. Chief Crawford has been terminated effective immediately. Crawford sat at the defense table now in silence, stripped of his uniform, stripped of his authority. For the first time that day, he looked small. His attorney attempted a last-ditch defense, citing stress, medication, and pressure. But excuses collapsed in the face of evidence. Dashcam footage played on the courtroom screens. Crawford's vehicle speeding at 95 miles per hour, weaving dangerously through traffic. Footage of him refusing to provide his license. Footage of him striking a state trooper in the face. The room was silent. On the charge of reckless driving, I said, I find the defendant guilty, maximum fine of $1,000. A murmur rippled through the gallery. On the charge of resisting arrest, guilty. 90 days, suspended pending completion of anger management. Crawford stared straight ahead. On the charge of assault on a law enforcement officer, guilty. 3 years in state prison. Gasps filled the room. And on the charge of criminal contempt, threatening a sitting judge and his family, guilty. An additional 2 years to be served consecutively. The courtroom erupted. Crawford's supporters sat frozen in shock. State troopers nodded quietly. Justice finally spoken aloud. Additionally, I continued, this court orders a full investigation into Mr. Crawford's claims regarding files on judges, prosecutors, and politicians. The FBI will oversee this investigation. Crawford's attorney stood shakily. Perhaps we could discuss a plea agreement. No, I said firmly. The time for deals is over. Mr. Crawford declared that the law does not apply to him. Today he learns that it does. I raised the gavel. Maximum penalty. The gavel struck. This court is adjourned. Something unexpected happened next. The state troopers in the back rose to their feet and began clapping. Then others joined. regular citizens, even reporters. They weren't applauding me. They were applauding accountability. The story spread nationwide. But the most important moments came after the headlines faded. 2 days later, Trooper Michael Stevens, the officer Crawford had assaulted, knocked on my door. "Judge Caprio," he said quietly, "I just wanted to thank you. When Chief Crawford hit me, I reported it. My supervisors told me to drop it. Said he was too connected. You showed us the system can still work." 3 days after that, Captain Maria Rodriguez, the new acting police chief of Westbrook, visited my chambers. "Judge," she said, "Crawford wasn't just corrupt. He ran a system of corruption. Officers who questioned him were transferred or fired. Evidence disappeared in cases involving his friends. We're cleaning house now." She outlined sweeping reforms, case reviews, new oversight procedures, body cameras for every officer, and a civilian review board. Cases where evidence vanished were being reopened. As she spoke, I thought about something my father once told me. Power doesn't corrupt character. It reveals it. And on that February morning, the law revealed exactly who Chief Daniel Crawford truly was, and reminded everyone else why justice still matters. A week later, I was briefed by the FBI. What they uncovered was even worse than we had imagined. Boxes, dozens of them, filled with illegally obtained files. Detailed dossiers on judges, prosecutors, city officials, and political figures, phone records, surveillance notes, private information gathered without warrants or consent. Chief Daniel Crawford hadn't just been abusing power in moments of anger. He had been weaponizing it for years. He used this information to intimidate and control people. Special Agent Morrison told me, "We're filing additional federal charges: conspiracy, bribery, obstruction of justice, and illegal wiretapping. He's potentially looking at another 20 years. Power unchecked had metastasized into corruption. 6 weeks after the trial, I received a letter that affected me more deeply than any headline ever could. It was from Jennifer Martinez. "Dear Judge Caprio, after my court appearance, a social worker helped me connect with programs for medical expenses and legal aid. My daughter's asthma is finally being treated properly. I'm working fewer hours now, but living better. I was in the courtroom the day Chief Crawford was arrested. I heard him say the laws didn't apply to people like him. And I thought about people like me, people who get punished so harshly for so little. Watching him receive the maximum penalty gave me hope. Hope that maybe the system isn't completely rigged against people like us. Thank you for showing my children that justice can still exist." I cried when I finished reading that letter. 6 months later, Crawford pleaded guilty in federal court to avoid an even longer sentence. Combined with my ruling and the federal convictions, he was sentenced to 18 years in prison, no chance of parole for at least 12. Not long after, the mayor of Westbrook sent an official statement to the court. Under Chief Maria Rodriguez's leadership, our department has undergone a complete reform. Complaints are down 60%. Officers are receiving proper training and oversight. We've had 0 cases of missing evidence. Community trust is rebuilding. Our officers are proud to wear their badges again. That, to me, was justice in motion. I still think about that February morning, about how one man's arrogance exposed years of systemic rot. But more than anything, I think about my father, Giuseppe Caprio. He would have said, "Frank, power without humility is tyranny, and tyranny must always be opposed, no matter what uniform it wears." Crawford believed his badge made him untouchable. He believed his connections granted him immunity. He was wrong. Months later, I received one final letter, this time from Crawford himself. "Judge Caprio, I'm writing not to ask for forgiveness, but to acknowledge the truth. You were right. The laws do apply to me. They apply to everyone. For years, I convinced myself my service entitled me to special treatment. Prison has taught me lessons I should have learned decades ago. Your decision to impose the maximum penalty was the only way I was ever going to confront what I'd become. I don't know if his transformation is real. Only time can answer that, but justice was served, accountability was achieved, the system worked, and that matters. When a police chief stands in open court and declares that the law doesn't apply to him, and a judge proves otherwise, that's not just a verdict. That's democracy doing its job. That's what equal justice under law is supposed to mean. So remember Chief Daniel Crawford. Remember what happened when he announced the law didn't apply to people like him. Remember that in America, No one, no matter how powerful, is above the law. Real justice isn't revenge. It's accountability. It's showing every Jennifer Martinez that the system can still work for them. It's reminding every honest officer that integrity still matters. It's proving that courage, even in quiet courtrooms, still has power. I'm Frank Caprio. I've served on the bench for 42 years. And if this case taught me anything, it's this. The most dangerous criminals aren't always the ones who break the law. Sometimes they're the ones who believe the law doesn't apply to them. Sometimes the best judgment isn't written in a book. It comes from the heart. But when someone threatens justice itself, when someone claims immunity from the law, the book is very clear. Equal justice under law means exactly what it says. No exceptions. If stories like this resonate with you, share them. Remind people that the system can still work. That accountability still exists. That justice still matters. Because when the law stands firm against power, justice doesn't just survive, it wins.